Hello and welcome to Monday Motivation. We're glad that you're here to join us this week. We go each week on Facebook, YouTube, and our own website, monday-motivation.ca. So make sure you head on over to our website, check out our past content, join our mailing list. Also, if you follow us on YouTube or Facebook, make sure you subscribe or like our channel. Monday Motivation Webcast is the hashtag where you'll find us on social media. This week we're going to talk about the discovery of the mass grave at the residential school. It happened a couple of weeks ago. There was a discovery of a mass grave of 215 native Indian children at a residential school. And as a result, there was shock, there was disgust, there was anger, there was remorse. Many people making comments at a sad part of our Canadian history. 215 children. Now, some died from sickness, but many we know were physically abused, emotionally abused, sexually abused, and we know this from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And families of these children that died in the care of the residential schools were never notified. They were never informed. In fact, we know now that coercion, threats, force, intimidation were used to abduct these children from their families. What we discovered, or what authorities have discovered, is that the discovery of these 215 children in a mass grave is just the tip of the iceberg. Estimates are that there are 4,000 children who went missing at the residential schools, and there are mass graves at a number of these residential schools. So what was discovered here was not an exception, it was the norm for these residential schools. And like many people, I'm shocked, I'm disgusted, I'm angry. I don't like what happened. It's a sad part of our history. But out of respect for the families and victims and the communities affected by this, I want to wait a couple of weeks just to share my thoughts and ideas because there's so much more we can learn from it. We can't rewrite history. What's happened has happened. But there is an opportunity to learn from it. And that's where I wanted to go with today's Monday Motivation. What can we learn from what has happened here? We can't change it. All the remorse, all the anger, all the regret, even, trying to blot out our history is not going to change what happened. But what can we learn from it? If we can learn something, then the death of these children is not in vain. There's at least some consolation that at least brought about positive change. Well, let's take a look. What could we possibly learn from this piece of history? The residential school system was implemented by the Canadian government and enforced by the RCMP. The opinion was that government and institutions could do a better job at raising children than parents. That's why they took them away from their parents. Many of the homes were run by church institutions. It's very sad that they called themselves a church when they in no way reflect the values of Jesus. No way whatsoever. I'm not saying the church itself was bad, but this aspect of it, this institution within the church, was definitely faulty. When Jesus walked the earth, he was very bold in demonstrating the value of women and children in a culture that didn't have any rights or little value. He even went as far as saying, if anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble. Such things must come, but woe to the person through whom they come. That's in Matthew chapter 18. Children had a special spot in the heart of Jesus, in the heart of God. And to abuse them, especially in a sexual way, to murder them, it's unthinkable. Jesus spoke against that. And the people that were involved in this, I wouldn't want to be them on Judgment Day. It's not going to end well for them. Jesus was very clear about that. So they, even though they had a church label, they in no way represent the Church of Jesus Christ, the kingdom of God. Totally opposite. Very demonic, very just total opposite. But the fact is, they were working under a church label, unfortunately. Third thought is it becomes easy to justify oppression and even genocide by dehumanizing a segment of society. That's how the Germans did it with the Jews. That's how the slavery. They weren't treated as if they were human. And even our own native people, there are documents from the early times referring to them as savages. By dehumanizing them, it becomes easier to justify the oppression and the genocide. It was even accepted as a good idea, the residential schools now I'm talking about, it was even accepted as a good idea by the general population. National Post, in one of their commentaries, said, "It's easy to forget that Indian residential schools were once the cause célèbre among Canadian progressives. Church groups held fundraisers for the nearest Indian home. Donors sponsored the tuition, and individual children and reformers wrote editorials praising the effort to bring civilization to the Indian." It was popular opinion that these were a good thing. That was the opinion of the day. It's easy to judge history, but when history judges our generation, are we going to fare any better? I wish I could say yes, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Even now today, the government still indoctrinates children under the label education. While there's much good that our school system does, parental input is largely symbolic, and this becomes obvious when parents challenge the government narrative. Government can make medical decisions for a child without a parent's knowledge of the procedure being performed. The government can take children and give them life-altering hormones during puberty, a time when they're just discovering their identity. Then, to finish it off, mutilate their body. And if a parent objects, they're jailed. It's happened. It's happened in BC. It's going on right now. We think we're more civilized and compassionate. But are we really? Are we really more civilized and compassionate than the people of 100, 150 years ago? Well, even today, thousands of innocent human beings are sacrificed each year just because they're an inconvenience. Now, we don't call them human beings, we call them a fetus, and we give it fancy names. But the fact is, it's still a human sacrifice. Human trafficking of children for sexual purposes is at an all-time high, with governments doing little to combat the problem. Even big tech, they have no problem censoring things they don't agree with, but they can't and do little to censor all the child porn that's out there. We talk about saving the world, but we still haven't brought a clean drinking water to our indigenous people. That was a promise in the last election. We can't even bring clean water. So if we, as a society, we think we're any better than our forefathers to set up the residential school system, I'm going to make a very bold statement here, but I'm going to say that's nothing more than self-righteous hypocrisy. History is going to judge our generation more harshly than we've judged the past generation. So what can we do? What can we do? Monday motivation. The idea is to motivate us to do something, to be better. How can we be better? So showing remorse, regret, disgust at what happened, that's a good start. But if it doesn't move beyond that, what has it accomplished? those children have died in vain. So what can we do? If you have ideas, please do share them. Use our feedback form, add it to the comments. We monitor the comments. But what can we do? Well, first of all, let's remember Canada is still a democracy. The politicians are there to represent us. So while we can blame government, we elected the government to represent us. So we can pressure our government to make good on the promise of clean drinking water. How can we say that we are remorseful for what happened when we haven't even fulfilled the promise that is under our control now of delivering clean drinking water? How about the issues of suicide and drug abuse on Indian reservations? What about the living conditions? I'm not saying give them handouts, but give them dignity and skills so they can thrive on their own. They deserve that dignity. So, well, remorse for the past is a start, but what are we doing today? What can we do today? Child sex trafficking takes place in many sectors of society. The elite, the working class, politicians, political and religious institutions get involved in the fight against child sex trafficking. Anytime the government says it knows better than parents and family, beware. The government and institutions cannot replace the family. They can help families, but they cannot replace it. Beware. For our native peoples, learn more about their culture and their past. In preparing for this, I haven't read the entire Truth and Reconciliation report, but I did read a very thorough summary of it to get an idea of what it was all about. Research it, learn more about the past. I don't have all the answers, but just saying we're sorry is insufficient. And if we've learned nothing, then nothing's going to change. So what's the takeaway? Think about it. What can we learn from this individually, and what can we do to make a difference going forward? So what is the value of a life? Jesus in Matthew chapter 18 made it very clear the value of a child. The value of a life is immeasurable. But these lives were snuffed out prematurely. But what can we learn from it? And what can we do differently so that their premature death is not in vain? Very sobering subject, but it's something that I did want to talk about because so often we get angry or we feel remorse, but we never change. My encouragement to you, do something different. Pray about it, think about it. What are you going to do differently so that we can get better and learn from our history? Canada has a great past, but let's learn from the mistakes that were made. Thank you for listening. Please do share your thoughts. If you have any ideas, if you want to add to the discussion, please do so through the comments. You can also go to our website. There's a feedback form, monday-motivation.ca. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject. But that's my thoughts on today's Monday Motivation. Next week, we're actually going to do an interview. It's with Chris Greenwood and myself, and it's on mentoring young men. Chris Greenwood Manifest. I've been trying to get him in the studio here for over a year now, and we finally pulled it off. We recorded an interview. It's on mentoring young men. So be sure to join us next week on Monday Motivation. Thank you. Have a great week. God bless.